Welcome guys to my first ever build guide made. We're going over the Cyclone Slayer and 3.19 with the newly added rage gloves. We're going over the items for both variants, and we're going about the configuration of the POE, and then I'm saying some words about the playstyle of the build, so you play it correctly. Something to notice and to know about it, so you don't die as much. And then I'm sharing some of my currency strategies that I'm farming right now, so you guys can afford this full build as well. So let's get started. I put in the POB for you the high end game budget variant and the mid budget variant. In the tree the same, mid budget, high end game. Let's get over some items in the high budget variant. That's the mirrored stuff. You want as much physical DPS as possible, and also you would like to have either double damage or crit multi for nearby unique enemies as last suffix, and obviously the strength and intelligence craft with crit chance. For the helmet abysses with berserk effect is really big because it's one of our main defenses as well. If you see in the POB, if you untick berserk, your EHP goes quite down. So it's really important that you get this with berserk effect, and this, the best would be with only 40% increased physical damage taken, obviously, so you don't die as much. Then for the chest, we have an astral plate with all res. We are a little bit res starved anyway, so we need this. And then you want the elevated mod for stun immunity while channeling. So always keep this in mind. You have to channel to not get stunned, especially in a simulacrum. If you stop channeling because you want to move out like of a chilled ground or anything, you most likely die. So always keep channeling so you're stun immune. Then we have obviously the gloves, the main part of the build. That transforms your life regeneration to rage regeneration. 100 to 1. So I have right now 14 rage regen. And this is not including, where is it? Yeah. The life mastery. 2 life regen per second while moving. So this is another percent. So I have 15, and you count like 15 plus 5 is your berserk duration, approximately. If you have around 9 or 10, that's completely fine. But yeah, the more the better. Then I'm playing with elevated onslaught and tailwind boots, which is the endgame variant. You can get life regen percentage as last suffix. I'm still looking for this, it wasn't on trade so far. But yeah, you basically can play with every suffix. Chaos res is good because I'm not even capped right now. Another res is also fine, so you don't have to play it somewhere else. And for the enchant to regeneration, if you've been hit recently, we're not evasion based, so we're getting hit quite often, so this is up all the time. Then for the amulet, I'm playing a bricked strangle grasp that I made myself. You can start with a normal one and just vaal it yourself or double corrupt it and get useful mods. Not any specific here. I got lucky with the tier 1 chaos res. You can go for attributes, you can go for res. Life would be the best probably. Some added physical damage is also nice. Then we have the Death Rush ring. That's also newly added this league, and I think is one of the most broken early uniques you can get. It's like 1 divine for perfect roll, and it gives you 5 recovery life on kill, which is super nice because you don't have any life regen. So this is like topping you up while mapping all the time, simulacrum the same. It's super insane. And then you get adrenaline on top of this, which is almost 20 million damage boost for me. And it's also adding 10% additional physical damage reduction, which is big for this build because you play with abysses. So this is like one of the nicest items for bosses where you don't care anything. You obviously can switch this out for another ring, for example, and get some more damage. Whatever you prefer. Then for the belt, I play with a Mageblood. The enchant I did recover 2 life on kill, and where you have rage, which is also super nice because this basically adds this up to 7% per kill. So I'm not dying while mapping ever. I'm just zooming through the map and killing everything, and I just get life all the time. For the flask, I play with 3 elemental flask. I tested this with a granite and basalt as well for more armor, but especially for simulacrums, it's way better to play with the elemental flask. It gives you almost 40% less damage taken for every element. And then I play with a quicksilver flask with armor suffix for mapping, and with a, let me get it, with a granite flask with armor suffix for bossing. On bottle phase for the last flask, you can also play this with a life flask or a lion's roar if you are on a tighter budget. Yeah. Then for the cluster, let's go into the tree. We definitely want to have Overlord. This is one of the main reasons we play with stuffs. It's super good. I compared it to like stuffs to axes and maces and swords. It's just not better because you get free fortify, and this stuff here is also super good. Increased defense as well does. Adds quite a lot of EHP. You also get free endurance charges from wielding stuffs, which is also super nice. More fist reduction. Then you want Feed the Fury. We're always leeching because we have the Slayer ascendancy with Overleech, so this is never off. So that's a really big damage node. And then obviously Overload for the Fortify. For the Druids, I'm usually just going for damage as much as possible. Keep in mind that increased attack speed with 2 melee weapons is as good as a crit multi-roll, but just makes the cluster approximately 20 divines cheaper. So always look for these. We got the Forbidden Flesh Druids. I'm playing with Arena Challenger, in my opinion the best one because it adds almost 80% movement speed modifier, which makes the build so enjoyable. So this would be my pick for the endgame variant for sure. And the other cluster I picked Weight Advantage. It's one of the best DPS nodes for this build as well. Plus Devastator, which adds some explosions, especially in simulacrums where you will feel this. If you have a boss stacked with mobs around it, you basically explode the boss pretty quick. So that's really nice. You also can switch this out for others, obviously. Then for the small cluster, I picked the crit cluster. And for the Watcher's Eye, we're obviously going with the Impale. It's 2 additional hits while using Pride. It's by far the best damage node. It's beating the 12% double damage while Pride as well. And then you definitely want to have the life recovery rate while affected by Vitality. This adds obviously Rage Regen, but this also gives us more Overleech, which is pretty big. It's like about, yeah, over 100 Overleech, that we have more. So this is really big because it affects all your life regen recovery rates. Yeah, you have to take the Brutal Favor to counteract the gloves. Otherwise you will just degen and get only the recovery from the ring, which is not enough for bosses. So definitely take this one. When I was leveling, I took this first, then I went this one, and the last I did this. Okay, for the annoyance of this amulet, we definitely have to take Charisma. You can swap this out if you want to go really high budget with Enlighten 5 in the end. This adds enough mana, so you can swap this out. I don't like to spend a lot on Enlightens, so I decided I just go with Charisma, put the Enlighten in there, call it a day. Then Panopticon is obviously one of the best damage nodes you can pick, 17.8%. You have to put both totems up. Then we have Merciless Skewering. It caps us off on the chance to impale. If you have any other source of chance to impale, if you play with a different weapon with like a Unveiled mod and the chance to impale, you can take another node for this. And for the last node I picked Influence. Influence adds aura effect, which was in my case, it's an extra rage region, it adds damage and it adds other defenses as well from determination. So that was my pick, but this is also flexible, you can use something else. And then I play with the Lethal Pride. My Lethal Pride does 15% double damage on perfect notes. And in the end I will show you how I found this. You can find them now in the POE directly, and I will show you quickly how to do this. So let's go to the medium budget variant. I put this in here. You switch to mid budget, and here as well. I put way cheaper gems in here. That's like just a normal 2120 Cyclone. I put all out qualities. I put out, I think. Dread Banner Divergent you need, but you can also play this with like a 2020. It adds some chance to impale to cap us off. And then the totems. If you cannot afford Anomalous Frenzy, you don't have Frenzy generation against bosses. So keep this in mind. It's obviously fine if you're just mapping, daily mapping, Simulacrum, anything. It's completely fine to play this with the normal one. But if you're bossing, you definitely want the Anomalous, 100%. Mark on hit, the same. I just swapped out the odd quality. It's a little bit more damage, but it's not really adding too much of the and also switch in the tree for the mid-budget gear. So let's go over the tree here real quick. For the Forbidden Jewels, you can play a lot of different ones. I put in Endless Hunger because it's the cheapest. It gives you even more overleech. You cannot be stunned by leeching, which means you technically could even play with the normal minus mana cost here and don't go for the elevated, which makes it even cheaper. The one I put in here I found on trade about 8.5 divines. Other good notes is, for example, Inspirational, which gives you more mana reduction. And you can anoint something different. First to Strike is also really nice if you want a defense, because you recover every time your Adrenaline triggers, you recover 25% life, which means you basically never die while you're killing enemies. Master of Metal is one of the best DPS nodes. It's really nice if you're planning on bossing with this build. Take this one. Then Arena Challenger, obviously my choice, because of the movement speed modifier, which makes the Cyclone so enjoyable. You also can play Overwhelm, which opens up a craft on the stuff. Then you don't have to take the crit chance on the stuff. You can play double damage or crit mold if you have a cheaper variant of the stuff. Yeah, Impact is obviously really good. That's about the Forbidden Jewels. Then for the cluster in this version, I picked some from trade. It's like Weight Advantage, Feed the Fury, Heavy Hitter. I think Smite of the Weak is also possible. It's also in the back, so it doesn't really matter which variant you get. These cost about 150C, 100C, so really cheap. Then I put in a Megalomaniac that I found on trade. It also was 2 divines. You also can play single mod Overlord to get the 45. It's definitely the cheapest option. I played with this for a while because I also swapped just recently to the better clusters that cost like 10 to 15 divines. But these clusters I put in here is like maximum 1 divine each. And then you play Overlord with any usable node, some life, some damage, whatever you can get basically. In this variant I also get the dex node here, because you don't have the Mageblood, which gives you quite a lot of dex. It's really hard to fix this differently. I kept the tree to level 95 for the medium budget, which is pretty easy achievable. If you cannot get to 95, you just unlevel some damage nodes. And we don't play with the Lethal Pride here. I just put in some damage and rest cluster, rest jewels in here. And for the Watcher's Eye, I picked the 2 mod, impale damage mod and life recovery. These were 2 to 3 divines on trade, so it's really like cheap to get. And this is by far the best, because it adds the overleech and the damage. Don't go for Vitality Life Regen, they are more expensive and they do less for you, because the Life Regen just applies to the Rage Regen and not to the overleech. Well, let's go over the items. I put a 820 PDPS weapon in here, which was around, I think, 20 divines. Then I kept the abysses. You can get like a burst roll for 2 to 3 divines. I paid for my perfect one, I think 7 or 6. The chest I already told you was 8.5. If you go with the Endless Hunger Forbidden Jewels, you can go for non-elevated, and then it's just about the Awakener's Orb, which is 1 to 2 divines the whole chest then. Pretty good. The gloves I put with vulnerability corrupt without the frenzy that I have. These gloves are about 2 divines. It's also really good. You can also start without the corrupt and just play them for 5C. For boots, it's probably one of the bigger pieces. I put Eldritch boots in here with life regeneration and action speed. Action speed is basically Tailwind, just a little bit weaker. And then I just put movement speed, rest, life, and the same enchant. You can just look for any high boots with resistances, life, movement speed, and then get the implicits yourself. It's really cheap to make. Stranglegrowth without the corruption, just the same annoyance that I play. And also keep in mind, if you get a version with the staff with the Unveil mod on the prefix with Impale Chains, you can skip on Charisma. Or you can skip on Merciless Fury. Same ring. Circle of Guild, I put one from trade that I found for, I think there are around 5 divines. 4 divines. The belt, instead of Mageblood, we're playing the Magnat. It's really good. It gives you a lot of flask charges, a lot of auras, and it's damage-wise even better than Mageblood. You just want to make sure that you have the 400 strength to get the triple damage chance. It's really big. For the flask, I put in Lion's Roar as Granite Flask, because you still want to keep up your armor quite high, because you play with Abysses. Then Diamond Flask for crit. All flask with gain flask charge when you deal critical strike, because we're critting quite a lot. Amethyst Flask, you can play a different suffix. I prefer to be immune to shock. You can also play Ignite or whatever you like, whatever you feel like. Then the Quicksilver Flask with increased effect and armor. And then a Life Flask. Instant recovery, because we're having Overleech, we're recovering quite a lot over time. If you come to a moment where you really need it, you want to have the instant. And then I put remove burning on use, but you can also switch this up to your preference. So that's about it about the POB. Let's go to the configurations. We generate power charges via Assassin's Mark. We're getting frenzy charges via Blood Rage, just for bosses, only if you have Anomalous. And we're generating endurance charges from this stuff node here. Then we're having Onslaught from the ring. You have to tick it because POB doesn't get it. That's automatic. So we have this here. Then we are Fortified from Overlord. We have Adrenaline. That's like my POB is like for mapping situations and simulacrums. If you want to adapt this for bossing, you untick Adrenaline and you put this out here. You have been hit recently, pretty much, yeah. So this would be the boss DPS approximately. You are in Bloodstand for bossing, and in Sand stands for mapping, always. It's like the AoE. 20 main DPS should feel fine for bossing as well. Then we're always channeling Cyclone. Infusion is always up. It's really good. Maximum effect on Pride. And Bloodstands. Target is not maimed. Melee distance. Pretty. Then Intimidate comes from Awakened Melee Fist. This is about 1 divine, level 5. And the Brutality is 1.5 divines. So Intimidate comes from melee fizz, and Crushed comes from brutality. Enemies not on consecrated ground. Yeah, that's about it for the configurations. So, and then some tips for the playstyle. It's no matter what budget you're on, you want to fight, for example, in a simulacrum, if you fight a boss, you 100% want to have Berserk up. That's like one of their main priorities. If you don't have Berserk up, I usually spin away a bit, put my totems down for the buffs, and then engage in the boss or the fight again when I have my Berserk up. Otherwise, you most likely get one shot from the front hits from the simulacrum bosses, for example. You see. Okay, that's one of the biggest things for the playstyle. And now I wanted to share some small strategy how I make currency right now. It's these memories, Einhar memories of the Sacred Grove. They give you 4 maps where you will guarantee have a Sacred Grove, where you find a lot of seeds, and you also fight a lot of bosses, which means you get a lot of invitations for Oshabi. And there you drop like the white seed that sells for 1 divine. So it's like in total I ran about I think 50 of the 50 maps now, and I make like per 4 maps. So per one of these invitations I make 1 to 2 divines profit, which is really nice. If you're really fast and you click fast, you run these maps just the Sacred Grove without completing the map, you can make like 7 to 10 divines per hour. Yeah, so that's it about the guide. I wanted to show you the Timeless Jewels. You have in the POB, you go on the Timeless Jewel Finder, then you go to the Lethal Pride. It doesn't really matter which keystone you take, because it doesn't matter for us. Then you pick the right jewel slot. In our case this would be Marauder. Then you have the desired node that you want. You go for node. That's in our case it's double damage. It adds this here. And then you go to fallback nodes. And you have fallback raid mode, sortback combined DPS. Then you generate, and then it automatically puts all the other nodes in which order, how much DPS they give you. Then I put the primary node is a little bit higher from the weight, so I put like around 5 here, because this is my most desired node. Doesn't matter how much exactly. And then you press on search, and then you get the number here, and it tells you all the nodes that are on this number. So yeah, hope you find the jewel you want. Hope you enjoy the build. If you have any more questions, put it in the comments. I'm happy to help. Have a good one.